How's it going? Welcome back to Arena Football Talk. I'm your host, Matthew Jacobson. Let's go ahead and talk about the Week 10 matchup between the Bay Area Panthers and the Arizona Rattlers. Dalton Sneed got the start in this one. I still have no idea why Garrett Kettle played against Tucson. Might be a matchup thing. I did have someone say he might have tweaked something in practice. Dalton Sneed might have, but I couldn't get any official confirmation. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right into it, try to make this as quick as possible. I want to get that mid-season video out for you guys. So the Rattlers are 2-3 all time against Bay Area heading into this one, and the last matchup was earlier on in this season, March 31st, I believe, and a 47-41 loss in the Bay Area. The crowd looked pretty good, I suppose, probably one of their better crowds. I do believe it was their first Saturday night game. More of those, please. I think indoor football works better on Saturday. Anyway, Bay Area won the coin toss. They like to defer the second half, and Arizona starts off with possession. And Dylan Winfrey, one more note. I did not recall seeing him play against Tucson. This was his game back. He missed, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. So it's good to have Dylan Winfrey back. Although, unfortunately, it didn't really seem like the defense played that much better having him back. Not his fault, just it definitely, this defense, man. Coach Guy said it in a post-game press conference. I want to say after the San Diego game, where he said they weren't finishing tackles, and they were missing a lot of tackles. They get a hand on a guy, and then they don't bring him down. Dual threat quarterbacks have just been running all over the Rattlers this season. But in this game, it felt like they couldn't even get near the ball carrier. And I definitely fumbled trying to ask that question to Coach Guy, but I did notice it. And Bay Area 6-1 heading into this one. The Rattlers just 4-3. I'm trying to make sure there's enough information here. When it comes down to the particulars, the first half was pretty business as usual. So Dawson Evans 24-yard field goal. JT Stokes for Bay Area has a 2-yard touchdown from Daquan Neal. You then have Glenn Gibbons Jr. with a 15-yard touchdown, making it 10-7 at the end of the first quarter in favor of the Arizona Rattlers. Then in the second quarter, JT Stokes a 12-yard touchdown. Dalton Sneed a 21-yard run. Sneed, he had a couple of passes where maybe a misread, maybe someone got a hand on it. There was definitely 2 or 3 batted down passes, and I did ask him about that after the game. He did mention that obviously, he's not a big, tall pocket passing quarterback.
I try not to think about that too much. You don't want to get flustered in the pocket and thinking, oh man, I can't throw through the middle of the field, right? So it's just finding those throwing lanes. I'm obviously not a 6'4", 6'5" pocket passer guy, so it's just the ability. I got to be better to see the window better, get through those tight throwing windows instead of trying to throw over guys.
You don't like to see that happen. Anyway, then you have Shane Simpson with 5 minutes 33 seconds to go in the second quarter, a 1-yard run. Nair Jackson, a 28-yard touchdown. So his first game for the Rattlers was against Tucson, and I noted somewhere on my notes here in the game thread that same thing happened in Tucson. There was a long pass attempt over by the end zone, and he just couldn't come down with it. That one he did, and Dalton Sneed spoke highly of him after the game.
That last game, so I'd say this is his first full game with us, first game in the system. Yeah, he did. He's definitely a downfield threat. You saw that on the 9 ball. He's got tremendous speed and makes the defense on his play back. So that's why you see a lot of the underneath stuff. He's getting guys open like Gigi on curls and hitches. That's the ability when you have weapons like that can take the top off the defense. It really opens up the field. So you saw that a little bit tonight, and we're just going to continue to build on that as an offense.
Let's go ahead and see how he does moving forward, because after a couple of bad plays where I was watching him where he couldn't bring the ball down, he also had a couple of really good plays, and I think overall he did have a good game. I do have to agree with Dalton Sneed there. I do believe it was after this touchdown, or it might have been just before this touchdown. Let me double check my notes. It did start with this one. So the Rattlers score. They bring it to within a 1-score game. There's about 3.5 minutes to go, somewhere in there, 2.5 minutes to go, depending on when the clock stops. And Coach Guy goes for an onside kick attempt, and it fails. It didn't even travel the full 10 yards, and that one kick might have been a little close. It looked like maybe Bay Area got pinky on it or something, like just one finger on it. It was still too close for comfort. That's not exactly a play where I'm like, oh, the refs got it wrong. You have to have enough evidence to overturn a call, and that's what led to that Daquan Neal 7-yard touchdown. It's a one-play, 14-second, 7-yard run. They only had the ball for one play. The Rattlers attempt that onside kick, and they're up by 3 points, 24-21. And that touchdown, now they're down by 4 points, 28-24, And then Bay Area recovers their own onside kick. They attempted an onside kick. Shane Simpson, a 3-yard touchdown. It's 34-24 at halftime. And the Rattlers just couldn't come back from that. That one bad decision. This defense was bad all day, all right? The defense has been a major concern. The Rattlers still have only managed to beat teams that were below 500 if you do not count 0-0. That is, the first week, that is the only game they won against a team that is 500. Everything else, they were below 500, and two of those teams, those being Iowa and Jacksonville, were winless at the point of those victories, and this defense just couldn't even make contact. These mobile quarterbacks run all over them, and then when you add a bad call, because that onside kick was a bad decision. That was a bad decision, and it just, they never recovered. Bay Area starts off Daquan Neal 6-yard run. It was a 5-play, 36-yard drive for about 3.5 minutes. At that point, it's 40-24, and yes, the Rattlers do answer back later, but not until JT Stokes with a 35-yard touchdown, 47-24. The game was already over. Heading in to halftime, the game was over, but then it's back-to-back unanswered touchdowns by Bay Area. It was gone at that point. Like, Snead, 9-yard rushing touchdown, making it 47-31. And then Bay Area answers right back with a kickoff return touchdown. Then Shannon Brooks, 8-yard touchdown. Daquan Neal, 26-yard run. At that point, it's 61-39. Every time the Rattlers managed to score something. And look, the offense put up 52 points. They put up 52 points in this game. The offense looked not that good. And I understand it is exclusively because Bay Area was excellent, mixed with Arizona's defense just not being good in this game. I understand that, so that's why I'm not saying the offense was terrible or nothing stupid like that. The offense put up 52 points, and watching this game, they did not look good. That is a problem. It does not come down to one individual player or the offensive line sucks or Dalton Snead or whoever else. That does not come down to any offensive player. It's just them putting up 52 points was nowhere near enough. Anyway, Shannon Brooks, 2-yard rushing touchdown. Shane Simpson answers right back, 68-45. Then Dalton Snead, a 1-yard run at the very end, 12 seconds to go, making it 68-52. So if you take away that last touchdown, they lose 68-45 by 23 points. By 23, that's 4 scores. They realistically lost this football game by 4 scores. This was just awful. And yes, that last touchdown does count. The final score is 68-52. The Rattlers fall back to 500. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the Rattlers half season report. But I don't know what to say to that. I don't know what to say, how to describe the football I watched, but just bad. And again, it comes down to the defense is not playing well enough. This team is really good. Bay Area is really good. The top few teams in this Western Conference, I'm going to pull up their stats right now. The top 2 teams, Bay Area and Vegas, are 7-1. And I agree with, I heard another media member saying it, they are not in the same range as these top 2 teams. Even San Diego and Northern Arizona at 5-3. Yes, it's literally a 1-game difference. And that feels massive right now with how anemic this team seems to be. And look, they're getting healthy. They're getting guys back. We can't talk about injuries anymore. We just can't. Individual stats. Daquan Neal had a phenomenal game. I know I normally stick to just Rattlers, but he only had to make 8 passes. He connected on 6 of them, 90 yards, 3 touchdowns. 50% of Daquan Neal's completions were touchdowns. And a little over a third of his overall pass attempts were successful touchdowns. He also had 75 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. The Rattlers allowed for 6 total rushing touchdowns, as well as 6 total touchdowns for Daquan Neal, because 3 of his were rushing, 3 of his were over the air. And JT Stokes, 6 receptions. Half of those were touchdowns. 90 yards. He was the only receiver that had any receptions in that game. It was literally a one-man show. It's ridiculous. Go to the Rattler side. Dalton Snead, 19 for 26, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns. His longest was a 28-yard completion. I think Snead played well. Maybe 1 or 2 more of those passes should have connected. I'm not going to sit here and throw a fit over 1 or 2 passes. They put up 52 points. I'm not worried about the offense. They put up 52 points. He also had 60 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns off of 12 attempts. So both quarterbacks had 6 total touchdowns, including 3 rushing and 3 passing. Shannon Brooks, 9 attempts, 25 yards and a touchdown. On the receiving end, Jackson, 5 receptions, 80 yards, a touchdown. Brooks, 6 receptions, 57 yards and a touchdown. Glenn Gibbons Jr., 5 receptions, 51 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Miles, 3 receptions, 10 yards. Once again, offense, no complaints. No complaints at all. You had 3 different receivers, again, have 5+ receptions and 50+ yards, and all those receivers had a touchdown. There is no complaints on the offensive side of the ball. That opening possession where they have to just settle. They have to just settle for that field goal, and I think they turned the ball over on downs once or twice. You had a couple of bad possessions, and you know what? I'm going to make sure to play the clip, because I do believe after the game, Dalton Sneed was talking about how the indoor game is about possessions. It's not about winding down the clock or anything, so I'll pause so you can listen to that.
Right? It's not field position or time management. It's possession. So you got to capitalize on those possessions, and we just didn't today.
But it just really goes to show in this game, doesn't really matter like that you put up 52 points. They didn't score on like 3 or 4 of their possessions. And that's what hurt them. Because when you make 1 or 2 bad decisions, 1 or 2 bad turnovers, an onside kick, I think they went for another one in the fourth quarter, and they did not recover any of their own onside kicks. And I get it. You have to do what you got to do to try to win. I understand that. This game was lost on one play, and that was going for that onside kick. And I'm going to criticize Coach Guy for that. That was a poor decision. One poor decision, this entire game just went away. From that moment, anyone in that building, if you're honest with yourself, knew, yeah, Bay Area is winning this. And it was kind of boring the entire second half, despite the fact that, again, the Rattlers put up 52 points. 3 different receivers, 5+ receptions, each had a touchdown. Both quarterbacks had 6 total touchdowns. Like, this was an exciting offensive game that was not exciting to watch. And yeah, Bay Area fans had a good time, and I'm glad you guys had a good time watching this. Rattlers fans, I'm still not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater or nothing like that, but something needs to change, and I'm not sure what other adjustments they can make on the defensive end. And yes, there's still injuries, but they are starting to recover from that. So at what point is that no longer an excuse? And I know even Coach Guy said the injuries aren't an excuse. I agree with him on that. You know, just because you criticize one decision the guy makes doesn't mean you think he's a bad coach or anything like that. But I don't know what else to say. I'll find things to say in the next video about their mid-season report, but this football team needs to get some things figured out, or else I don't think they're going to be a playoff team this year. It's still going to be close. They're still within a game of being right back in a playoff position, but you need to start winning. And coming up this weekend, they're playing against, tomorrow specifically, they're playing against Duke City. They're hosting them. That's a must-win. You got to start it there, one game at a time. And whenever I talk to people after the fact, whenever I talk to the players, the coaches, it always seems like that's the mindset. I think that's the correct mindset. So one game at a time, the Rattlers do fall, and that final score looks a little better than it actually was. And I'll stand by, realistically, they lost by about 24 points.